Good afternoon, good afternoon. Today we are the second day of May 2017. It's a sunny day, it's beautiful today, like a day of summer, and I will read for you the key 5 in the wonderful book Master Keys to Personal Christhood. You have the website of Kim Michaels, who is the receptor of the dictations of the Ascended Master Jesus. His website is askrealjesus.com. You will find more information and extracts of this book on my webpage, on my website, in my website, Heaven on Earth Yes, www.heavenonearthyes.wix.com/le paradis sur terre, subsection, Master Keys, les clés maîtresses in French. It's bilingual. Okay. Just a little information. I didn't record keys yesterday and in the weekend because I'm recording these days also some videos, private videos from a new course that I share with people. His name in French is Métamorphose Globale. In English, Global Metamorphosis. I'm not sure it's a good translation. It's 10 courses. Each one is made from my video of a special theme. I have 10 themes, 10 subjects. The first, not the first one, but each course has the video of 1 hour 30, sometimes a little bit more, a little bit less. Workbook, book of exercises, psychological exercise with questions of around 10 pages, and a sheet with some suggestions more to deepen the subject. So if you understand French, you can read that, not read that, but see my video in French. It's my last video, the number 83 on this page. It's section video 2 on my website, The Divine Sky. The address will be on the text below the video, leciel-divin.wix.com/The Divine Sky, section videos 2, number 83. And I explained that if you propose this formation, this kind of workshop on the web, course on the web, to people around you, family, friends, colleagues, at work or in school, you can have half the amount of the money that I ask for this special course, to have an exchange with people, so I can share that with you if you refer me some students for this course. Okay, it was the introduction. It's a long section today, almost 30 pages, because it's from page 225 to 254, almost 55, and 29 pages. But it's a very, very important subject. I don't know any person who is not concerned by this subject. You will be able to give your opinion after this video. Okay, are you ready? Key 5, Freedom from Cravings. In this and the following keys, I will address some of the more obvious blocks that prevent you from being in the natural state of having God's wisdom and love flowing through your being. As you will see, these blocks are very much human in nature, and we might consider them kindergarten stuff for a sincere spiritual seeker. Yet there is great value in going over them with me, for these human conditions have inundated the collective consciousness. Unless you have a deeper understanding of them, it can be difficult for you to free yourself completely from all remnants of them. And I might say that unless you do free yourself completely from them, you will not attain ultimate freedom. Indeed, many sincere spiritual seekers have become stuck at a certain level precisely because they have not completely overcome one of these basic blocks. Thus, it is time to let them go, for you cannot pursue the path to Christhood while being burdened by these toxins. In order to address the blocks, I need to give you some basic information. Some readers will already know this, but I need to make sure that all are on the same page. First of all, you need to have a clear understanding of your energy field. As you know from science, Einstein's theory of relativity states that the world is not made up of two separate substances, namely matter and energy. Einstein discovered that everything is energy, and by doing so, he broke down the barrier between mind and matter. Energy is a more fundamental element than matter, which proves that thoughts are more fundamental than matter. This one realization is the foundation for all of my so-called miracles. Science has consistently proven that the more fundamental elements have power over the grosser elements. For example, all matter is made of subatomic particles, so the laws that work at the level of these particles have a fundamental influence on what form anything in the material universe can take. Let me give a more visual example. You can carve a block of wood, and there are certain laws that guide how you work with wood, such as not cutting against the grain. Yet these laws function within a larger framework, namely the laws that guide how wood is formed at the molecular level. And these laws function within an even larger framework, namely the subatomic level, where pure energy is transformed into subatomic particles that can take on the form of any matter substance known on Earth. Do you see what I am saying? The same subatomic particles can form both wood, metal, water, and air molecules. Thus, you see that all visible phenomena are created from a deeper underlying reality, which has a fundamental influence on everything in the material universe. Visible phenomena represent the level of effects, and the invisible reality represents the level of the real causes. My point here is that in order to really change your life, you need to deal with causes and not effects, which means you need to look behind surface appearances. For example, as I said in the last key, many Christians traditionally seek to change certain types of behavior by suppressing them. Yet, what I want is for you to go to the cause of these types of behavior and remove the cause, the beam in your own eye, so there is nothing left to suppress. And in order to do that, you need to know where the cause is located. You need to understand that your total being, your mind, has more than one level. When you perform an action, it involves your physical body, your brain, and your conscious mind. Yet, you will never understand why you take certain actions by only looking at the brain and the conscious mind. You have no doubt heard the old saying, "Man, know thyself," and the deeper meaning is that you, man or woman, must know all levels of your mind. You must take command over your container of self. The basic understanding you need is that your mind is an energy field, and as such it is made up of energies that vibrate at different levels. In fact, there are 4 main levels of your energy field, which in some esoteric traditions have been called your 4 lower bodies. However, I prefer to call them the 4 levels of the mind. They are the outer mind that is closely linked to your physical body. This is the mind where you make conscious decisions and take many actions. This mind is very much affected by the physical brain and your environment, and for some people, their conscious awareness is limited to this mind. Yet most spiritual seekers have expanded their conscious awareness to go beyond this mind, which is why they are open to the spiritual side of life. One of the main elements of spiritual growth is to expand one's conscious awareness beyond the physical mind, thus incorporating all levels of the mind and coming to know your full identity. Yet, expansion is not enough, since it must be followed by purification of all levels of the mind. Second, the emotional mind. This is obviously the level of your feelings, and as you know, feelings are very volatile and can easily be pointed in this or that direction. The emotional mind is above the outer mind, and thus feelings are a very powerful force for controlling your physical actions. You have experienced that when certain feelings build in intensity, the compulsion to take a certain action overpowers your conscious will. People who are completely controlled by their emotions have very little self-control, and thus they find it extremely difficult to make progress on the spiritual path. The reason being that since the emotional mind is more fundamental than the conscious mind, seeking to consciously suppress feelings is an uphill battle. As a sincere spiritual seeker, you need to attain control over your emotions, and one element of this is to remove the energies that pollute the emotional mind. Another is understanding where feelings originate. Third, the mental mind. First one, it was the outer mind. Second, the emotional mind. Third, the mental mind. This is the seat of the intellect and your ability to understand the world. It is here that you analyze everything and can make more level-headed decisions. Ideally, your thoughts should lead to balanced emotions that lead to balanced actions. The problem is that the intellect is an analytical faculty, and I have already explained its inherent weakness. Thus, the intellect can find it difficult to know what is right, and this is what often plunges people into unbalanced emotions. They use the intellect to convince themselves that what they are thinking is right, which then gives them the belief that it is acceptable, necessary, or unavoidable that they engage in certain limiting feelings. To overcome this pattern, you need to purify your mental mind from the energies and the dualistic illusions that prevent you from seeing that there is a deeper reality beyond the mental level, a reality that is not a matter of having the best intellectual analysis and argument. And 4, the identity mind. This is the highest level of your lower being, and it is the seat of your deepest sense of who you are in relation to the material universe. Your spiritual identity is anchored in your I am presence and can be accessed only by your conscious self, not by any of the lower minds. As the most fundamental part of the lower being, the identity mind has a major impact on every aspect of your life. Yet, most people are unaware of its existence and thus have no control over it. They uncritically accept the sense of identity that is put upon them as they grow up, which then forms the foundation for all of their thoughts, feelings, and actions. If people's identity is based on the consciousness of death, can their thoughts, feelings, and actions do anything but follow? Thus, it is essential for a spiritual seeker to become aware of the identity mind and begin to purify it of all mortal elements. We now need to add the fact that everything in the material universe is made from energy, and that visible matter is actually a grosser manifestation of finer or more fundamental energies. Science has discovered how an energy wave can take on the form of a subatomic particle, even switching back and forth between a particle and a wave form. The implication is that beyond the material universe is a realm of finer energies, energies of a higher vibration, and this is, of course, what religious and spiritual teachings for thousands of years have referred to as heaven or the spiritual realm. My point being that the matter universe is created by lowering the vibration of spiritual energy, and thus this world is sustained only by a constant stream of energy from the spiritual into the material spectrum of vibrations. This flow of energy is replicated in the 4 levels of your mind. You now see that the ideal state for a human being is that there is nothing to impede the natural flow of energy through the 4 levels of your mind. The spiritual energy flows from your higher being, your I am presence, and it first enters your identity mind. Here it is colored by your sense of identity, almost as if it passes through a filter. Yet, if your sense of identity is based on your spiritual self, the energy flow will not be diminished, but will simply be stepped down in vibration so it can enter the mental mind with full force. Again, the mental mind will color the energy, but if the images in the mind are based on the reality of Christ, the energy flow will not be diminished. It then enters the emotional mind, and if your emotions are pure, they will give the energy a positive direction that will be aimed at raising up all life. This will result in life-supporting actions that enrich both yourself and everyone else. In the natural state, the energy that flows from your I am presence is stepped down and directed by your total being, and this happens in such a way that all life is enhanced. This is the form of life that I came to give all people by helping them reconnect to what they truly are. As I said, quotation, I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. John 10:10. When you express your spiritual identity through all of your thoughts, feelings, and actions, You multiply the talents, and thus God will give you even more creative energy. This is what gives you the truly abundant life. So what happens when the 4 levels of your mind are polluted by imperfect beliefs and energies? Well, the natural flow is blocked and your creative power is limited. In reality, most of the energy that flows from your I Am presence is blocked in your higher bodies and never reaches the level of the physical body, which means there is very little energy available for the person to be creative. In fact, many people have limited the energy flow to the point where there is barely enough to keep the physical body alive. Such people have very little energy left over to express their individuality, and thus they often mindlessly follow the mass consciousness. How does this happen? Well, if you take God's energy and use it for selfish purposes, you are obviously not multiplying your talents, and thus God has no return current that can be multiplied. You are limited to a certain amount of energy that enters your identity body. As you add up selfish beliefs, meaning beliefs based on the mind of Antichrist that sees you as a separate being, you create certain blocks in the 4 levels of your mind. To give you a visual illustration, compare the flow of energy to the flow of electricity coming into your house, the house being a symbol for the conscious mind. Now imagine that someone sneaks in and hooks up an electrical device to your power line before it enters your house, and that there is only a fixed amount of electricity coming to the house. One device might not make a noticeable difference, but as more and more devices are plugged in, there is not enough power to run everything in your house, so you are forced to shut something down. Furthermore, the devices that are plugged in before your house do not produce any useful output. All of the energy going into them is consumed by their own internal functions, and there is nothing coming out that is useful to you or the world. The devices are simply spinning their wheels and producing heat that makes your house too hot for comfort. My point being that the blocks in the higher levels of the mind are like devices that continually consume energy. As you become increasingly selfish, more and more of the fixed amount that enters your lower being is used up by your internal divisions, thus being blocked from flowing through you. As a result, you use up internally what should have been expressed externally to enrich yourself and all life. This is essentially the process behind what psychologists today call clinical depression. However, it can also lead to all other psychological imbalances, including a constant state of agitation, which is caused by the excess energy that makes your energy field an unpleasant place to be. The symptoms can be varied, and this can account for most psychological problems. How do you break this self-reinforcing spiral? You do so by purifying the 4 levels of your mind from the energies that have accumulated there. And to do that, you must also overcome the dualistic beliefs that cause the downward spiral to start. This is the subject of this and the coming keys. Now, for another piece of basic information, as you might know, there is no record of my activities between the age of 12 and the age of 30. The last record of my early life is this, quotation, Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover, and when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. And when they had fulfilled the days, as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among their kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that you sought me? With you not that I must be about my father's business? Luke chapter 2. The next record of me is when I appear at the wedding in Cana, turning the water into wine. John 2:1. So, what did I do in the meantime? Well, some assume, I'm not sure the pronunciation, if the S is like sh or s. Sorry. I have an English more from reading than watching or talking, so I can read, I can understand, but for the pronunciation I don't have enough practice in person or with television, movies. Almost everything I do in English is reading. Sometimes I watch videos also, but I think I read more. Okay. The question was, so what did I do in the meantime? Well, some assume I worked as a carpenter, others that I apparently did nothing, simply sitting around waiting for my mission to start. These assumptions are based on the mainstream Christian idol that says I was God incarnate and thus have to have been born already perfect. Yet it is not more logical to assume that in the 17 missing years, I was not simply passively waiting for my mission to start, but was doing what I said I was going to do, namely, being about my Father's business. And what does that mean? Well, if I knew I had a mission for God, does it not seem logical that I was doing everything possible to prepare myself for that mission? In other words, I was walking the path of Christhood by studying and applying whatever spiritual teachings I could find. The reality is that I did indeed engage in a pilgrimage of seeking out various spiritual teachings and teachers, and this journey brought me far and wide, from Egypt to India and Tibet. Many Christians vehemently deny this, but they do so because they fail to realize that I did not grow up in the Christian mental box in which they have grown up. There was no Christian mental box at the time. Thus, I was not a Christian. And if you want to put a label on me, you would have to say, I was a mystic or a universal spiritual seeker who sought truth wherever it could be found. I knew, as all true mystics do, that God cannot be confined to any of the mental boxes, religious or otherwise, found on earth. Thus, I knew that in order to prepare myself for my mission, I would have to find the universal spiritual path that runs like an unseen thread behind the world's other religions. In fact, I knew that my immediate mission was to teach that path to the Jewish people and beyond that to all. During my spiritual journey, I studied, among others, the philosophy of Buddhism, which has many profound teachings and practical tools. In fact, some people have found parallels between my sayings and the sayings of the Buddha, which is not a coincidence. Partly because I did study the teachings of the Buddha, and partly because we both drank from the same universal fount of truth. So what I want to do at this point is to introduce a teaching from esoteric Buddhism that relates to the topic of the blocks in your mind. The concept I want to introduce is that of spiritual poisons. The traditional teaching from Buddhism is that in the beginning there was one primordial Buddha named Vajrasattva. This being divided itself into 5 other Buddhas, in the West called Dhyani Buddhas. There are not Buddhas that embodied on earth, but they exist in a higher realm. Each Buddha embodies certain spiritual qualities, and the perversions of those qualities are the spiritual poisons. These poisons are what cause human suffering, and thus the way to overcome suffering is to free oneself from the poisons. This can be done partly by invoking the assistance and spiritual qualities of the Dhyani Buddhas, and partly by overcoming the beliefs that open your mind to the poisons. In the language we can use today, the Buddhas are actually members of the ascended host, and their qualities correspond to certain spiritual energies that were used to create the material universe. The poisons are the perversions of the qualities of the Buddhas in the form of energies with such a low vibration that they cannot flow back up to the spiritual realm. Thus, by engaging in the poisons, you diminish the natural figure-8 flow between your higher and lower being. To give you a feel for the poisons, let me list them. Okay. Ignorance and delusion, anger and hatred, spiritual and intellectual pride, cravings and greed, envy and jealousy, non-will and non-being. There are 2 ways for you to be affected by the poisons, namely by producing them internally and by taking them in from the outside. The 2 are connected, so let me explain. You know that you live in an environment where you are, so to speak, surrounded by chemicals and microorganisms that can be dangerous to your health if they are allowed to enter your body. You do not live in constant fear of this, since you have learned to take certain precautions, such as cleaning and cooking your food, cleaning a cut and not breathing in dangerous fumes. Furthermore, you know your body has an immune system that repels or consumes dangerous substances. You now need to realize that you also live in an environment where you are surrounded by unseen energies that can be equally dangerous if they are allowed to enter your energy field, meaning the 4 levels of your mind. The difference being that you were not taught this, so you have not built a habit of taking the necessary precautions to keep your energy field pure. Many spiritual seekers have actually learned to protect themselves from the poisons without being aware of it. Yet there is great value in becoming consciously aware of the process so you can take even better precautions. The Earth is currently a very impure environment where the collective consciousness of humankind is heavily affected by all of the spiritual poisons. So, if you open your energy field to them, you can quickly be overwhelmed and lose control over your life. As an example, let us take the poison of anger. It should be obvious that during the conflict-ridden history of humankind, enormous amounts of anger energy has been produced. Science tells you that energy cannot be created or destroyed, so once energy has been qualified with the distinct vibrations of anger, it will remain in that state indefinitely, meaning until someone transforms the energy back to a higher vibration. If you engage in a fit of anger, you will often direct the anger at another person. This will literally blow or tear a hole in your energy field. And once the opening is there, anger energy from your environment can flow inwards through it and accumulate in your energy field. Take note of what I'm saying here. Your energy field has a certain structure that is designed to help you express life-supporting energies in the material realm. However, your field is not designed to facilitate the expression of anger or other emotions that do not enhance life. The consequence is that when you do express such emotions, you will damage the original structure of your energy field, often tearing rents in your garment. One instance of losing control in a fit of anger can literally tear a rent in your field that can open you up to an influx of energy from the outside. And as long as you stay in an agitated state, the energies will keep flowing in, which makes it difficult for your energy field to repair itself. The field can indeed heal itself as your physical body can, yet you know that if you cut your skin and keep scratching the cut or allowing dirt to accumulate, the healing process will take much longer. Once energies have an inroad, they will pull on your thoughts and emotions, making you more prone to respond with anger in other situations. The next time you engage in anger, you reopen or reinforce the hole and more energy can come in. It should be easy to see that this can quickly create a downward self-reinforcing spiral that can cause you to lose control of your life because your mental and emotional minds are simply overwhelmed with energy that turns your mind into a very chaotic environment. As a parallel, consider how a chemical poison works in your body. A very small amount of a deadly poison will have no effect on your body. As more and more poison accumulates, you begin to see some long-term effects that still might not be deadly or even noticeable. Yet, if you keep increasing the concentration, the chemical effect of the poison will eventually paralyze your major organs, and there comes a point of no return, beyond which it becomes impossible to reverse the effect of the poison, leading to death. Once a downward spiral of the accumulation of toxic energy has begun, it will take a very determined effort to reverse it and begin an upward spiral. Yet, most people are not aware of how to even do this, and many of them don't care, for they have now become convinced that it is unavoidable or even justified for them to respond to certain situations or life in general with anger. This can even lead to the state of paranoia, where people feel the whole world is out to get them, and thus they are constantly in an agitated state, seeking to ward of attacks that often do not come or are largely imagined. This state is actually part of the explanation behind the concept of possession by evil spirits, although there is also a deeper explanation. Can you see how easy it is for the ego and the forces of Antichrist to control people by keeping them in an agitated state in which they have no attention left over to truly think about life, but keep doing the same thing over and over, even for lifetimes? Obviously, a person in such a state of inner conflict and division has no chance whatsoever of walking the path to Christhood. Thus, it is essential for all disciples of the living Christ to learn how to break such a spiral by performing spiritual first aid. Having set a foundation, I will now concentrate on the specific poison that is the focus of this key, namely cravings, lust, and greed. I am starting with the poison because it is the lowest in vibration, being centered around the physical body. Thus, it is the most obvious, and it is also the poison that most spiritually interested people have already overcome to some degree. By showing you this, I hope to help you see that you already have some momentum on overcoming the poisons, and by becoming more aware of causes and effects, you can more easily free yourself from the downward pull of all the poisons. As Maitreya explains in his book, there are many reasons why life streams find themselves embodying on Earth. Yet, part of the motivation is that life streams want to experience the material universe and do the things that can only be done through a physical body. If you look at the world today, you will obviously see that people are at many different levels of consciousness. Some people are completely focused on experiencing the things of this world, including the pleasures of the body, be it drinking beer or having sex. Now, take care to realize that I am not condemning this. God has defined the law of free will. It is not uncommon that a life stream has to embody many times on Earth, sometimes spending several lifetimes focusing on a particular bodily pleasure or another earthly pursuit before it has had enough and begins to wonder if there isn't more to life. So, within the framework set by the law of free will, there is nothing inherently wrong with people focusing on earthly pleasure, if that is what they desire to experience. However, the law of free will also states that while you are allowed to engage in earthly pursuits, doing so is not the underlying purpose of your existence, meaning you cannot do this forever. The reason for this is that your life stream was not created exclusively for the purpose of experiencing the material universe. It was created to be a co-creator with God and help raise the material universe to the point of becoming a permanent sphere in God's creation, again, as explained by Maitreya in greater detail. So, there will come a point where your conscious self is beginning to awaken to its higher purpose. Yet, it is possible that your container of self has taken in so much of the poison of cravings that your conscious self cannot actually follow its innermost longing. The poison is pulling it into repeating the old patterns, meaning that you are no longer making a free choice to engage in the experiences of this world. Your free will has been overpowered by the poison, and you cannot free yourself from the downward pull. My point being that while there are some people who engage in worldly pursuits out of free will, there are many who have lost their free will to the prince of this world. Let me give you a visual illustration. The poisons in the mass consciousness exert a gravitational pull on everything on earth, including you. Yet, you know that a physical magnet only attracts something made of iron. So, if you walk through a strong magnetic field, it will have no noticeable effect on your body. Yet, if you fill your pockets with pieces of iron, the magnet now has something to pull on, and this can prevent you from walking away from the magnetic field. Likewise, the gravitational pull of cravings will only have an attractive force on energies of the same vibrations. Thus, if you have no such energies in your container of self, you can live on earth without being affected by the mass consciousness. You can be in the world, but not of the world. Now, imagine that you allow a small amount of the energies of cravings to enter your field. The effect is hardly noticeable, yet like attracts like, so the energies will gradually accumulate. As they do, they begin to exert more of a pull on your mental and emotional minds, which means you become susceptible to the belief that it is acceptable to engage in an activity that seemingly satisfies the cravings. You are now blinded by the energies. You also begin to feel an emotional craving to engage in such an activity, and the craving becomes gradually stronger. As the energies continue to accumulate, they can eventually become so strong that they can overpower your conscious will, and you have now become addicted to a particular activity. Yet, no matter how much you engage in the activity, it never seems to be enough. And the reason is that the accumulated energy will continue to pull on you. You literally can never satisfy this craving, which is why people's life can be consumed by an addiction that never leads to any ultimate satisfaction, but becomes an end in itself. The only way to break the vicious circle is to lessen the pull of the accumulated energy by invoking spiritual energy to consume it. Yet, you also need to uncover the mental beliefs that made it seem acceptable or necessary to participate in a certain activity. By taking this twofold approach, you can break any addiction, and let me assure you that there are many subtle addictions, even emotional and mental addictions. Even many spiritual people have addictions that they do not recognize. In fact, even the quest for peak spiritual experiences can become an addiction. Obviously, if you had been completely blinded by the poison of cravings, you would not have been reading this book. Yet, there are indeed many spiritual seekers who have only just begun to awaken, and thus, while not being entirely controlled by the poison of cravings, they are still very much affected by this poison. And this causes them to have to struggle very hard, often sliding backwards each time they think they have finally gained some ground. It is my goal in this key to empower you to avoid this seesaw pattern and instead turn your pursuit of spiritual growth into a steady upward climb. And let me assure you that even more mature spiritual seekers can benefit from this lesson, for few are completely free from the poison of cravings. As a spiritual seeker, you obviously know that you are more than your physical body. You are a spiritual being who is only temporarily residing in this physical body, much like your body can get into a car in order to go somewhere. Yet, have you really contemplated the relationship between the spiritual you and the physical body? This relationship has two sides. One is, as already mentioned, that the body is not an end in itself, but a means to an end, namely the spiritual purpose of helping to co-create the material universe. So obviously, you do not want the body to become a hindrance for that goal. Yet, in order to make the best use of your body, you have to see the other side of the coin, which is that your body is not evil and it is not inherently an enemy of your spiritual growth and goals. This will require some contemplation. Many spiritual traditions have depicted the body and the material universe as enemies of your spiritual growth. Some branches of Christianity have even portrayed the body and matter itself as creations of the devil, as being evil. Thus, there was a need to discipline the body, suppress bodily urges, and starve the body of anything pleasurable. If you read Maitreya's book, you will see that the material universe is not evil and was not created by the devil. Matter was simply created at a relatively low vibration, and people in embodiment were meant to raise it to a higher vibration. Because so many people have forgotten their original purpose, the vibration of matter has actually been lowered beyond its starting point, but that still doesn't make matter evil. It is simply dense, and while this does make it harder for people to contact the spiritual realm, it is not an insurmountable obstacle. You simply need to know what you are up against and how to overcome the downward pull of matter. I hope you can see that in Christianity there was an obvious cause for this hatred of the body. It was the fact that the Catholic Church made the wrongful decision that priests were not allowed to marry. Thus, priests had no outlet for sexual desire, and since it was seen as coming from the body had to be evil and needed to be suppressed and even punished. Beyond this, there is, however, a deeper explanation. You are probably already aware that there are spiritual cycles in the life of this planet. I am the master for the 2000-year cycle that started with my birth, normally called the Age of Pieces. We are now moving into the next cycle, called the Age of Aquarius. The fact is that during Pieces, the overall goal for people was to establish a connection to the spiritual realm and their higher selves. And because the collective consciousness of humankind was very dense during that age, as witnessed by the many atrocities in the history books, it was difficult to make that connection. Thus, for those who valued the spiritual connection highly, it was viable and necessary to eliminate any distractions. That is why you see a tendency for spiritual people to withdraw from worldly life into protected spheres such as monasteries. In the Aquarian age, the conditions are different. Despite many current world events, the consciousness of humankind has been raised significantly, especially over the past century. Thus, you now see many people who have a spiritual connection while living active lives in society. In fact, the focus for the Aquarian age is to bring spirituality into all aspects of life, including everyday activities. Thus, it is no longer necessary for spiritual people to withdraw from the world. Some can still benefit from doing so, perhaps only for a time, but most will make more progress by living active lives where they demonstrate a spiritual approach to life through everyday activities. As with everything else, there is an alpha and omega aspect, and only when the two are balanced by the Christ mind will you have sustainable growth. The alpha aspect is that you are not here to simply experience the pleasures of earth. In fact, you are not here to accept the current conditions on earth. If you are a spiritual person, you have a divine plan, and part of that plan is to make your individual contribution by expressing your spiritual individuality to raising the vibration of earth until God's kingdom, the abundant life. Until God's kingdom, the abundant life, is manifest for all. So, your physical body is meant to be a tool for this goal, and thus you need to see the body as a servant and the spiritual you as the master of your house. This can only be done through the Christ mind. If you are unbalanced in the alpha aspect, you will begin to see the body as a hindrance, even as an enemy, and you now engage in a struggle to suppress the body. Instead of working with the body, you are working against the body, feeling it is working against you, and this makes you a house divided against itself, turning your life into a struggle that eats up your creative energy. So there is little left for expressing your divine plan. On the other hand, if you become unbalanced in the omega aspect, you fail to see your body as a servant, often coming to see it as an end in itself. Thus, what is meant to be your servant will rule your life, and all of your creative energy will be swallowed up by pursuing bodily needs and pleasures. Again, the only way to balance the omega aspect is the Christ mind, which helps you see that your body is not an enemy of your spiritual goals, but the very foundation for fulfilling those goals. I am an ascended master, and I have, as the Bible says, been given all power in heaven and on earth. This means that because I have fully united with my higher being, heaven, I now have all power of mind over matter. I could instantly remove all disease from the earth. Yet the law of God, the law of free will, states that I cannot use my power on earth because I am not in a physical body. As Genesis explains, God has given dominion over the earth to those people who are in a physical body on earth. Thus, although I have the power to change the earth, I do not have the authority to do so. Only people in embodiment have that authority, but they don't have the power. My purpose for coming into embodiment was to demonstrate that all people have the potential to attain the power of mind over matter, whereby they can use their authority to manifest the abundant life on earth. I want to show you how to attain my power, or at least a measure of it, while you are still in embodiment and thus have the authority to produce real change. So you now see that your physical body is the very platform for the fulfillment of your divine plan, which means that instead of working against it,
You need to learn how to work with it. You also see that in order to work with the body, you need to be in the driver's seat. For if you let the car drive itself, both of you will end up in the ditch. Whereby, I mean that if you let the body and lower mind lead, they will blindly follow bodily cravings, and you will then be a blind follower. In order to put yourself in control of the body, I need you to begin a very deep shift in the way you look at the body and even the material universe. I have told you that everything, even solid matter, is made from energy. Ultimately, even physical energy, such as electricity or sunlight, is made from spiritual energy that has been lowered in vibration into the material frequency spectrum.